methane. Cows, methane. We are thrashing it out and we're asking, should Aussie farmers be taxed for their cows' methane emissions? They're doing it across the ditch in New Zealand. They're calling it the cow's burp tax or the fart tax, whatever it is. Now, the idea is to reduce emissions in the agriculture sector and the carbon footprint. Now, the livestock sector itself in Australia makes up 48% of Australia's total methane emissions. Almost half of our total methane emissions comes from the livestock sector. So, should farmers be held accountable for the environmental impact of their cattle and sheep's digestive processes? 131873, your call's next, but let's thrash it out first. Joining me, I've got Dr. Vanessa Rauland, CEO of ClimateClever, and she's arguing for a tax on farmers. Doctor, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And James Jackson from the National Farmers Association. He's a sheep producer from Guyra out near Armidale, and he argues against the tax on farmers. James, g'day.
Good afternoon, Chris.
Vanessa, we'll start with you. In short, it's a controversial thing, isn't it? A burp tax, a fart tax. Why is a methane emissions tax on farmers a good idea?
Look, I believe that we all have a role to play when it comes to addressing climate change. We work day in, day out with all sorts of businesses, and I think everyone needs to start to take into account what they're responsible for and putting in measures to reduce. And unfortunately, up until now, there hasn't been probably enough pressure on all types of businesses, not just agriculture. Having some form of incentive or disincentive via a tax, we need to put that pressure on.
James, as a farmer, clearly bad idea.
Terrible idea, actually. A methane tax on biogenic methane, which is essentially emitted from livestock and rice, is another source of it from agriculture. It's a terrible idea because we actually have been reducing the methane emissions for probably 120 or 30 years. We spend a lot of money on researching it because methane is lost opportunity for farmers. We don't like actually giving off methane. We actually like to use it and turn it into product. I have to say that agriculture, what we do is take millions of tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. We combine it with water and we use biology to turn it into stuff. That is the essential, that's the biochemistry of agriculture. Now, we do that every day, and there are emissions, emissions like methane, but there's a lot of sequestrations as well, and we don't know what the net effect, if you like, of agriculture and especially the livestock industry is on the carbon footprint. So the idea of taxing it is dumb because there's already economic imperatives to reduce it.
Vanessa, we need our agriculture sector, right? It's important for us. We need it for food, for exports, for wool, for all sorts of stuff. Is whacking taxes on a sector that is so important to the Australian economy really a great idea?
Look, I am going to agree there with James and to say that this is a sector that is already very severely impacted by climate change, and there are obviously all these other cost of living pressures as well. My argument, I guess, is more that all businesses need to be taking action, and I don't actually think that agriculture should be taxed specifically if other sectors are not. And I think definitely the elephant in the room here is the fossil fuel sector that is not being adequately either taxed or, in fact, it's still being subsidised. So I think, and when you talked about methane being, agriculture being responsible for 50% of methane emissions, we also have to think about in terms of total emissions for the country, and agriculture only represents 13% compared to some of these other big sectors. So my argument is more that all sectors and all businesses need to start to see what role that they can play.
Now, yeah, but if we're talking about animals here, Vanessa, I really just don't get it.
So animals do contribute to.
Yeah, so do we. Like, are we going to tax ourselves?
Yes, we should.
What, for burping and farting? I'll be in trouble.
No, certainly for the general impacts of our daily lives and.
Oh, Vanessa's in and out on the phone there. James, while we try to get Vanessa back, we're taxing ourselves now.
Well,
I don't know what to say anymore.
that is correct. Your analysis is actually quite correct, because what happens is that agriculture actually sequests billions of tonnes of carbon dioxide. The methane that comes out of cattle, and they do actually emit methane, there's no two ways about it. There's a few things that we can do. You've probably heard of the Asparagopsis seaweed that decreases it. We've got all sorts of other techniques that we're looking at the moment, and we've been using things like monensin to decrease emissions of methane for 40 or 50 years. So there's a lot of technologies, and there's some genetic tools that are coming on board. Some genetically engineered bugs that go into the
Yeah, but James, is this worthwhile for you guys? If you're starting to get involved in all this, what would be expensive technology, doesn't it just make the cost of doing your business more expensive anyway? So why would you go down that path, and why would farmers go down that path?
Well, it is actually a win-win, because methane is actually energy, and it's actually in our interests.
Sure, maybe for some of the big guys, but some of the little guys.
But there's techniques. There's techniques that we can use to minimise it. Now, having said that, the problem with heating the planet is not agriculture. It is not agriculture. We sequester. Our business is using carbon dioxide. We're the only business in the country that uses billions of tonnes of carbon dioxide and turns it into stuff. That's what we do. So the idea that we're the problem here is it's shooting the solution, if you like.
Vanessa, are farmers the problem, Vanessa?
I think we're all contributing to the problem. So you can't deny that there are emissions associated with agriculture. But as James points out, there's a lot of really exciting solutions that can be found there as well. And we need to keep encouraging those solutions, those low carbon technologies and new research and science around improving fertilizers and everything that he has said. So we definitely need to keep encouraging that good behaviour. So whether we're using a tax or a carrot, some form of incentive, definitely the agriculture needs to keep doing what they're doing in terms of reducing, but we also have to start to focus on other larger emitter sectors too.
All right. Thank you, James. Thank you, Vanessa. I thank you for coming on. We're not going to solve it here, but I think it's fair to say more carrots, less tax. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Dr. Vanessa Rauland, CEO of ClimateClever, and James Jackson from the National Farmers Association. 131873. You've heard from the experts. Over to you. I think I know the answer. Fart tax, yes or no? 13 to 5.